The night was cold and heavy. The ruins of an old alien city stood silent under a broken sky. Wind moved through empty streets, carrying the smell of dust and smoke. Buildings half fallen leaned like tired giants. Shadows stretched long as if the past still lived there. Among the rubble sat a little alien girl. Her skin pale with hunger, her small body wrapped in torn cloth, her big, glowing eyes filled with tears. She looked no older than 8 human years, but her face carried the weight of loneliness much older. She whispered into the air, her voice shaking, "Human, please. Be my daddy just for one day." No one was there to answer. Only the wind moved, only silence grew heavier, but she did not stop. Her tiny voice trembled as if she believed the stars might listen, as if someone somewhere might hear. Her hands clutched a broken piece of cloth. It looked like it once belonged to her mother. She pressed it to her chest and cried softly. Far away, a human walked through the ruins, his boots crunching on broken stone, his coat heavy with dust, his face marked by old scars. He was a traveler, a survivor, a man who carried no family. He thought the city was empty. He came looking only for shelter and food, but then he heard it, the faint sound of a child's cry. He stopped, every muscle tense. In this dead world, nothing good came from strange sounds, but the cry was weak. Not a trap, not a soldier's trick. It was soft, filled with pain, filled with longing. He turned toward the sound, his heart uneasy, the closer he walked. The stronger the cry became, words began to shape. Human. Daddy, please. He froze. A cold shiver ran down his spine. Who could be calling him like this? Who in this ruined city would beg for a father? He found her sitting on a broken stair, her knees pulled to her chest, her small shoulders shaking. When she saw him, her eyes widened, glowing softly in the dark. Fear flashed inside her, but it did not last. Instead, hope rose in her trembling smile. "You came," she whispered. Her voice cracked like dry leaves. "You are human." The man did not answer at first. He only looked at her, his mind filled with questions. Why was she alone? Where were her people? Why call him daddy? He had no answers. But the sight of her was enough to break the walls he built inside himself. She stood slowly, her legs weak. She tried to step toward him, but stumbled. He caught her by reflex, her small hands clutching his arm like she feared he might vanish. She looked up at him, her eyes wet. "Please. Just for one day, call me daughter. I do not need forever, only one day." The man's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, but words failed him. He had walked through many ruined worlds, seen war, seen death, seen children cry, but never had. He'd been asked this, never had a lonely voice begged for a father, not for protection, not for food, but for something as simple and impossible as love for one day. He gently placed her back on the stair, his face hard, but his eyes softening. "Why?" "Me?" he asked, his voice low. "Why do you ask this of me?" The girl wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "Because you stopped," she whispered. "Others walk away. Others look and do not care. But you came. I can see it in your eyes. You do not want to. But you will not leave me here." The man looked at her, the broken city around them echoing with silence. He wanted to deny it. He wanted to say he would walk away tomorrow. But in his chest, something stirred, something he thought was buried. The wind howled through the ruins. The stars looked down cold and far away, and in that lonely night, the human faced a choice. He could turn away, leave her to her fate, or he could stay, just for one day, and give her what she begged for. The girl waited, holding her breath, her tiny frame shaking, her eyes locked on his face, hope and fear fighting inside her. If he said no, she would break. If he said yes, her world might change. The man slowly crouched to her level. His scarred hand resting gently on her shoulder, he looked into her glowing eyes, and for the first time in years, he let down his guard. One day, he whispered. Only one day, her tears fell, but her lips curved into a trembling smile. She held his hand as if it was the only thing keeping her alive in the broken city. In the dead night, hope was born in the cry of a lonely child. The morning light broke slowly over the ruined city, gray beams of sun slipping through cracks. In fallen walls, dust floating like ghosts in the cold air, the human sat against a broken pillar. His coat wrapped around the small alien child who slept lightly against him. Her breathing weak, her body fragile. He had promised her only one day, just one day to pretend he was her father. But already he felt the weight of that promise. It pressed against his chest. It whispered in his thoughts. He had seen children before, hungry, orphaned, lost. But this one was different. This one asked not for food, not for safety, but for a father. When the girl stirred, she opened her glowing eyes. Faint light circling in the dark pupils, she looked at him with a soft smile. "You are still here," she whispered. Her voice cracked, but full of relief. "I thought maybe you would be gone when I woke." The man's eyes hardened, but inside, his heart twisted. "I gave you my word," he said. "One day, remember?" She nodded weakly, pulling the coat tighter around her small frame. "One day is enough," she said. But her trembling hands told a different story. They clung to his sleeve as if one day could never be enough. He studied her closely now. The marks on her skin were not just dirt. Thin scars crossed her arms. Her legs showed bruises old and new. Her stomach growled faintly. He realized she had not eaten properly in days, maybe weeks. "What happened to you?" he asked, his voice low but sharp. "Who did this?" She turned her head away, shame filling her eyes. "People," she whispered. "Not always humans, sometimes my own kind too. They said I was useless. They said I had no family, so I was worth nothing." Her words struck him like cold knives. He clenched his fists. He knew cruelty. He had seen it on battlefields, in camps, in broken towns, but to hear it from a child's lips made the silence around them unbearable. She looked back at him suddenly, tears shining. "But I knew. Somewhere there was one human who would not be like the others. I prayed for you. I begged the stars, and then you came." The man swallowed hard. He wanted to tell her she was wrong. He wanted to tell her he was not that kind of man. But the word stayed trapped. Her belief in him was stronger than his doubt. He searched through his pack, pulling out a small piece of stale bread, the last of his food. He broke it in half and handed it to her. She gasped softly, holding it like treasure. She nibbled slowly, afraid it would vanish. Every bite filling her with warmth she had almost forgotten. He watched her, every small movement, every grateful look. And something inside him began to change. The walls he had built from years of loneliness, pain, and survival cracked a little. When she finished, she leaned against him again, her tiny voice asking, "Will you tell me a story, Daddy? Just one." The word cut through him like fire. He wanted to push it away, but her eyes begged for more than silence. He took a deep breath. Once, long ago, there was a soldier who walked alone. He thought he needed no one. He thought his heart was stone, but then he found a small star that shined only for him. And for the first time, he did not want to walk alone anymore. She smiled faintly, her eyelids heavy. "That is you," she whispered, drifting into sleep again. Her hand still gripping his sleeve. The man stared at her, his throat dry. He told himself again it was only for one day. Yet even as the thought formed, he knew it was already a lie. But the ruins around them were not safe. He heard the distant echo of footsteps, metallic clinks, voices carried by the wind, hunters, scavengers, people who searched for the weak. People who would see the girl as nothing more than prey. He lifted her gently into his arms, her small body light as feathers, her head resting against his chest. She did not wake, only breathed softly, trusting him completely. He carried her through broken alleys, eyes scanning every shadow, every corner. At last he found an old shelter, half buried in rubble. He slid inside and set her down, waiting for the danger to pass. The sound of hunters grew closer, their voices rough, their laughter sharp. He gripped the handle of his weapon, ready if they found him. The girl stirred slightly in her sleep, her lips moving, whispering words even in her dreams. "Don't leave me, Daddy." The man's grip tightened, his scarred hands shaking for the first time in years. He had promised only one day, but already he knew he could not let her go. Not to the hunters, not to the cruel world outside. In the silence of the shelter, with danger creeping near, the human looked at the broken child sleeping at his side, and for the first time in a long time, he did not feel alone. He felt the fragile beginning of something stronger than fear, stronger than promises. He looked down at her face, at the scars of pain she carried, and whispered softly, "I will not let them hurt you again." Outside, the footsteps faded. The hunters moved on. The city returned to silence, and in that silence, a bond was being written. Not by blood, not by time, but by a child's desperate plea and a human's reluctant heart. The day rose slowly, the sky pale and gray above the ruins. The human sat in the shelter with the child still leaning against him, her breath steady now, her small hands still gripping his sleeve as if afraid he would vanish. He had not slept. His eyes stayed open through the night, his ears sharp for any sound. When she awoke, her glowing eyes looked at him with wonder, as if she could not believe he was still there. "You did not leave," she whispered, her voice small. "I thought maybe it was a dream." He gave a slow shake of his head, his face tired but firm. "I said one day, and one day is not finished yet." Her lips curved into a trembling smile, her face lighting up with hope. "Then today you are my father," she said softly, almost shyly, "just for today." The words settled in his chest like fire. He had told himself it was nothing, just a promise to a child, but when she looked at him with such fragile joy, he felt the weight of it. Heavier than any battle he had fought, he helped her stand. Her body weak, her legs trembling, he steadied her. With his rough hands, she leaned on him as if she had always belonged there. He thought of turning away, of reminding her it was only one day, but he did not speak. His silence was its own answer. They walked through the broken streets together, the girl holding his hand tightly. She spoke little, but her eyes were alive with questions. "What is your name, Daddy?" she asked suddenly. He hesitated. The name felt distant, something he had not said in years. Finally, he muttered, "Marcus." She repeated it softly, as if trying to memorize it. "Marcus. My daddy." The words slipped from her lips with innocence, but they pierced deep into his guarded heart. As they walked, he searched the ruins for food, for water, for anything that could keep them alive. His instincts as a survivor never left him, yet now every choice was different. Every step he took was not for himself, but for the child who clung to him. They found a broken market stall, half buried in rubble. He pushed aside debris and discovered a cracked water container still. Holding a little, he filled a tin cup and handed it to her. She drank slowly, carefully, and when she finished, she whispered, "Thank you, Daddy." The man felt something shift inside him again. He tried to remind himself it was only one day. But the way she spoke, the way she smiled, it was as if she believed that one day could heal all the years of her loneliness. Later, as they rested beneath a leaning wall, the girl pulled at his sleeve. "Daddy, will you tell me about the stars?" He looked at the gray sky above. Faint sunlight struggling through clouds. "The stars," he said slowly, "they are faraway lights. Each one a world, some empty, some alive, some burning so bright you could never touch them. Her eyes widened, glowing with fascination. "Then maybe my real father is in the stars," she whispered. "Maybe he is watching me." The man's chest tightened. He wanted to say something hard, something that would stop her dreaming. But instead, he placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Maybe he is," he said softly, "but today I am here." Her smile grew warm. Tears sliding down her face, she leaned against him, whispering, "That is enough." But the peace did not last long. As the day stretched, they heard sounds again. Rough voices echoing across the broken streets. The hunters had returned, searching, their boots clattering like iron hammers on stone. The girl froze, fear flashing in her eyes. She clutched Marcus's arm, whispering, "They want me. They will take me back." Marcus tightened his grip on his weapon, his face turning to steel. "Not while I breathe." He muttered. He pulled her close, hiding her behind him, his scars burning with old fire. The hunter's shadows passed near, laughter sharp, weapons clinking. Marcus held his breath. The girl buried her face in his coat. Every second stretched long, when the voices faded into the distance. Marcus finally exhaled. His heart pounding, he looked down at the girl. Her small face, pale but safe, and he knew something deep inside himself. This was not only one day, it could never be only one day. Yet when she looked up at him with trembling hope, she whispered again, "You will stay with me until the sun falls." "Right, Daddy?" He forced himself to nod, his voice low. "Yes, until the sun falls." Her smile returned, fragile but real. And in that moment, Marcus realized the truth. Every breath, every choice, every step he now took was no longer for survival alone. It was for her. The broken child who had asked for nothing but one day, and given him something he had not felt in years. For the first time since he could remember, Marcus felt not just like a survivor, not just like a wanderer, but like something more, like a father. Even if the promise had begun as only one day. Deep in his heart, he already knew one day was only the beginning. The city lay silent under the dying sun. The sky a dull red, as if bleeding over the horizon. Marcus moved carefully through the ruins with the child close by his side, her small hand gripping his coat, her glowing eyes wide with fear. They had eaten little, just scraps from what he found. But the girl did not complain. She walked on, trusting him. Every so often she would whisper, "Daddy," just to make sure he was still there. And every time he answered with a steady nod. But Marcus felt it before he heard it. The weight in the air, the sense of being watched. His instincts, sharpened from years of survival, told him danger was near. He pulled the girl behind a crumbling wall, motioning for silence. Then the sound came. Boots striking stone, voices rough and cruel, hunters moving through the streets, searching. Their laughter echoed against the hollow buildings, sharp and ugly. The girl's body trembled, her voice barely a whisper. "They are coming for me." "Daddy," Marcus crouched low, peering through a crack in the broken wall. He saw them, 4 figures, armored in patched metal, weapons slung across their backs, their eyes scanning the ruins with hungry intent. They moved with purpose, not scavengers by chance, but trackers. One of them knelt, touching the ground, pointing to faint footprints in the dust. "She came this way," the man growled, "and she is not alone." Marcus's jaw tightened. His hand wrapped around the hilt of his blade, his other arm shielding the girl, his mind racing. He had promised her one day, only one day. But now that promise was turning into something far more dangerous. The hunters spread out, moving closer. Marcus guided the child deeper into the ruins. His steps soundless, his breath steady. The girl followed, her tiny hand never letting go of his. They slipped into an old hall, its roof half collapsed, pillars leaning like broken teeth. Marcus pushed her into a narrow space between stones, whispering, "Stay here. Do not make a sound." Her eyes filled with fear. "But what about you, Daddy?" she whispered, clutching his sleeve. "I will not leave you," he said firmly. "But if they see me, I must keep them away. Do you understand?" Her lip trembled, but she nodded, hiding in the shadows as he moved silently into the open. His scarred face calm, his body ready, the first hunter stepped into the hall, eyes scanning the dark. Marcus struck like a shadow, blade flashing. The man dropped with a muffled cry, his weapon clattering against stone. Marcus dragged the body aside before the others could see. The girl pressed her hands over her mouth in terror. But her eyes shone with something else too. Awe. She watched the man who had promised to be her father fight like a storm, silent and deadly. The other hunters called out, suspicion rising, their steps heavier, their voices sharper. Where did he go? Find him. Marcus moved swiftly, striking from the dark. Another fell. Silence swallowed his scream, but the last two were cautious, blades drawn, eyes sharp. They circled the hall, sensing the danger. One of them shouted, "We know you are here. Give us the child and we let you live." The girl gasped softly, her whole body shaking. But Marcus's voice cut through the shadows, low and hard. "She is not yours." The hunters cursed, their eyes searching. Then the fight began, steel clashing, sparks flying. Marcus fought with the fury of a man who had nothing left to lose, his blades slicing through the dark, his body moving with deadly precision. The girl watched with wide eyes, fear and hope crashing inside her. Every strike of his blade echoed in her chest. Every movement told her something her heart already knew. He was not fighting for himself. He was fighting for her. The last hunter fell with a broken cry. Silence returning to the hall. Marcus stood, breathing heavily, his scars burning, his weapon dripping with blood. The girl crawled from her hiding place, her small hands trembling as she reached for him. "Daddy," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You saved me, Marcus." Knelt, wiping his blade clean, his eyes meeting hers. He wanted to tell her again it was only for one day, but the words would not come. Instead, he placed his hand on her head, steady and gentle. "No one will take you while I live." She threw her arms around him, holding tight, her fragile body shaking against his chest. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, feeling her heart beat against his. The ruins were still dangerous. More hunters would come. But in that moment, in the shadows of pursuit, something stronger than fear grew between them. The girl whispered again, her voice soft but certain, "You are my daddy." Not just for one day. Marcus said nothing, but deep inside, he knew she was right. The night returned slowly, the broken city covered in silence once more. Marcus found an old shelter hidden behind fallen stone. Inside, the air was cold but safe. The walls cracked but strong enough to keep the hunters away for now. He lit a small flame from scraps of wood. The weak fire flickered, throwing shadows across the girl's glowing eyes. She sat close, her knees pulled to her chest, her small hands stretched toward the heat. Marcus gave her the last piece of bread he carried, his own stomach empty, but he did not care. She ate in silence, nibbling slowly, her face softening for the first time since he had met her. When she finished, she leaned closer to him, whispering, "Daddy, can I ask you something?" He looked at her, his eyes heavy with fatigue. But he nodded. She hesitated, her fingers twisting the torn cloth she always held. "Will you tell me a story? Not about soldiers or battles, but a story like a father tells his daughter before she sleeps." Marcus froze, his throat tightening. He had never done such a thing, never told gentle stories. His world had been fire and steel. Yet when he saw the hope in her trembling smile, He could not refuse. He leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. Then spoke slowly. There was once a girl who lived in a broken world. She thought she was alone, but then she found a small bird. The bird was weak, its wings torn, but still it sang. The girl listened every day, and because of the bird, she was not alone anymore. The girl listened with wide eyes, every word sinking into her heart. She whispered softly, "That girl is me, isn't it?" Marcus opened his eyes, looking at her carefully. "Maybe," he said, "but maybe the bird is me." Her lips curved into a trembling smile, tears forming. "Then we saved each other," she whispered, and she leaned against him, her head resting on his chest. The fire crackled, the shadows danced. Marcus felt her warmth through his coat, her small body finally relaxing. For the first time, he saw her breathe without fear. Sleep beginning to touch her tired eyes, but before she closed them, she whispered again, "Daddy, will you hold my hand until I sleep?" His scarred hand hesitated, then slowly reached for hers, her tiny fingers wrapped around his rough skin. Fragile and trusting, the feeling cut through him, deeper than any blade. She sighed softly, drifting into dreams, her lips curling into a faint smile. Marcus sat still, his eyes on the fire, his hand unmoving in hers. The silence of the night felt different now. Not empty, not lonely, but filled with something new. Something he had long forgotten, the warmth of family. As the hours passed, his mind wandered. He thought of his past, of the people he had lost, of the walls he had built inside himself. For years he had told himself he needed no one. That family only brought pain. But now, with the child breathing softly against him, he knew those walls were breaking. At one point, she stirred in her sleep, whispering words without knowing, "Don't leave me, Daddy." Marcus looked down at her, his heart heavy but alive. "I won't," he whispered into the dark, though no one but the shadows heard. The fire burned low. The night stretched long. But Marcus stayed awake, guarding her, feeling a strange peace even in the ruins. When dawn broke, pale light sliding through cracks in the wall. The girl opened her eyes slowly, her hands still holding his. She looked up at him, her voice soft. "You stayed all night." He gave a slow nod, his voice rough. "I told you I would not leave." She smiled, brighter than the weak morning sun. "Then you are my daddy. Not just for today, but forever." Marcus felt the words pierce deep. He wanted to correct her, to remind her it was only one day. But he could not. The truth was already inside him. He did not want to leave. He did not want to let her go. The girl stood, shaky but determined. She looked around the shelter, her small voice filled with sudden courage. "Can we build something here, Daddy, just for us? Like a home?" Marcus stared at her, his chest tightening. He knew this city was not safe. He knew hunters would return. But he also knew what she asked was not about walls or roofs. It was about belonging, about family. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "We will try," he said, and for the first time in years, he meant it. Together they gathered broken pieces of wood and stone, placing them around the fire. The girl smiled as she worked, humming softly, as if building even a small corner of safety gave her strength. Marcus watched her, silent but moved. Her fragile hope more powerful than the ruins around them that night when they sat again by the fire. The girl whispered softly, "This is our home now, isn't it, Daddy?" Marcus looked at her glowing eyes, at her fragile smile, and though he knew the world outside still hunted them, he nodded. "Yes," he said, his voice steady, "Our home." And for that moment, in the warmth of fire and family, the broken city did not feel so empty anymore. The morning broke cold, pale light spreading across the ruined city. Marcus stood outside the shelter, his eyes scanning the streets. The child slept inside, curled under his coat. Her soft breaths steady. For a moment, the world looked almost peaceful, but Marcus knew better. The hunters would return. He had left 3 bodies behind, and men like them did not forgive. They would search until they found him, until they found her. His promise to give her only one day had already turned into something greater. But with that came danger. Danger he could not ignore. Inside, the girl stirred, her glowing eyes opening. Slowly, she blinked at him and smiled. "You are still here, Daddy," she whispered. Her voice soft with relief. Marcus nodded, his rough hand brushing dust from his blade. "I told you I would not leave." She sat up, her small body weak but her spirit glowing brighter. "Then today we stay together no matter what happens." Her words cut into him. Not like a plea, but like a vow. He swallowed hard, his chest heavy. She did not know the choice he would soon have to make. They left the shelter as the sun climbed higher. Marcus carried her when her legs grew too weak. She rested her head on his shoulder, her small hands clutching his coat. Every step he took was slower, more careful, his ears listening for danger. At midday, they found an abandoned plaza. Broken statues lay shattered across the stone ground. The girl stopped suddenly, her eyes fixed on one piece, a cracked carving. Of a parent holding a child, she touched it gently with her fingers. "That is us," she whispered, "a father and a daughter." Marcus's throat tightened. He wanted to deny it. To remind her it was only for one day. But when he saw her fragile smile, when he felt her hope burning like a small flame, he could not speak. He only nodded once. The piece shattered with a sound, a sharp whistle through the air. Marcus spun, dragging the girl behind cover as a bolt struck stone. Hunters stepped from the shadows, more than before, armored, armed. Their voices filled with cruel laughter. "There he is," one of them growled. "The man who thinks he can steal." "What?" "Belongs to us." The girl trembled, clutching Marcus's arm, her voice breaking. "They want me. Daddy, they will take me." Marcus's eyes hardened, his body tense, his hand gripping his weapon tight. "No," he said, his voice like iron. "Not while I breathe." The hunters spread out, circling them. Marcus counted 6 this time. Too many, but he did not move. Back, he pushed the girl behind him, her tiny body pressed to his back. His eyes locked on the men who would take her. The leader sneered, "Give us the child. Wanderer, she is not yours. You cannot fight us all." Marcus's heart pounded, his breath steady. He looked down at the girl, her glowing eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "Daddy, don't leave me, please." And in that moment, the choice came clear. Tomorrow had always been uncertain. But now it stood before him. He could run and maybe survive. Or he could fight and protect her. Maybe die, but never break her trust. He raised his weapon, his voice low but strong. "She is mine now." The hunters roared, charging forward. Steel clashing against stone, Marcus moved like a storm, his blade flashing, his body fueled not by survival, but by something stronger. He fought with the fury of a man who had finally found something worth dying for. The girl cried out, watching from behind the broken statue, her small voice breaking, "Daddy, please don't fall. Please." Marcus fought 1, then 2, his scars burning. His body pushed beyond its limits. Pain tore through him, but he did not stop. Every strike was for her. Every step was for her. Every breath was for her. But the hunters were many. One blade cut across his arm, another across his side. Blood darkened. His coat, his knees threatened to buckle, but still he stood. Still he fought. The leader raised his weapon, striking hard. Marcus blocked, the force slamming him back. The girl screamed, "Daddy!" The sound echoing through the ruins. Marcus's vision blurred, but her cry pulled him back. he roared, driving forward with strength he did not know he still had, his blade cut deep. The leader fell, silence spreading for a moment. The remaining hunters hesitated. Their courage faltering, Marcus stood over their fallen leader, blood dripping, his chest heaving. His body shaking, but his eyes like fire. "Come closer," he growled, "and you die." The hunters stepped back, their eyes uncertain. Finally, they turned. Dragging the wounded and fleeing into the shadows, Marcus dropped to his knees, his strength leaving him, blood pooling beneath him. The girl rushed to his side, her tears falling. "Daddy, no, don't go. You promised me." He pressed a hand weakly to her cheek. His voice rough, broken. "I promised you one day, but I gave you everything I had." She held his face with trembling hands, crying, "Not one day, forever." "Please," Marcus looked into her glowing eyes, his chest heavy. He knew the choice he made today was not just about survival. It was about her, about tomorrow, about family. He whispered through blood and pain, "Then I will fight for tomorrow too." Her tears turned into a small smile. She clung to him, and in the silence of the ruined plaza, surrounded by shattered stone and fading light, a broken soldier and a lonely child chose tomorrow together. The plaza lay silent after the hunters fled. Broken statues stood like fallen guardians. Marcus knelt on the cold stone, his body shaking from wounds, his coat soaked in blood, his breath shallow. The girl clung to him, her glowing eyes filled with tears. "Daddy," she whispered. Her small hands pressed to his face. "Don't leave me, not after everything. Not after today." Marcus closed his eyes, the pain deep, his strength fading. But her voice held him steady. Her touch pulled him back from the edge. He forced his eyes open, looking at her trembling face. "I promised you one day," he said weakly, "but it cannot end here. Not now." The girl shook her head, crying harder. "I don't want just one day. I want forever. I want a father. I want you." Her words struck him deeper than any blade. He felt the fire in his chest, the reason to stand, the reason to keep breathing. He pulled her close with what strength he had left, whispering into her ear, "Then I will not be your father for one day. I will be your father for as long as I breathe." Her sobs turned into trembling laughter. A fragile sound, but filled with hope. She held him tighter, her small body shaking against his. With great effort, Marcus rose to his feet, lifting her into his arms, every step a battle against the pain. He carried her out of the plaza, his eyes scanning the ruins. He knew the hunters would return, stronger, more prepared, but he no longer thought only of escape. He thought of building a life. He thought of giving her tomorrow. They found another shelter, deeper within the city. An old hall of stone with half its roof still standing. Marcus set her down gently, leaning against the wall, his body heavy but his heart alive. The girl looked at him with glowing eyes, her voice small but filled with wonder. "You stayed, you fought, you chose me." Why? Marcus looked at her, his scarred face softening. "Because you asked me to," he said. "Because you believed in me when I did not believe in myself." She smiled through her tears, her tiny hands reaching for his. "Then we are family." The words settled deep inside him, stronger than pain, stronger than fear. He squeezed her hand gently. "Yes," he whispered. "We are family." That night, the fire burned low. Marcus sat awake, watching her sleep beside him. Her face calm, her breathing steady. She no longer whispered in fear, no longer clutched her cloth as if it was all she had. Now she held his hand, and he held hers. He thought of the road ahead, the dangers that would come, the battles he would face. But for the first time in years, he did not see only darkness. He saw a reason to fight. He saw a future. In the quiet of the ruins, Marcus made his vow. Not to a commander, not to a cause, but to a small child who had begged for one day. "I will give you more than a day," he whispered, his voice rough but steady. "I will give you every day." "I have left." When dawn came, the girl woke and looked at him, her eyes shining with something new, not just hope, but trust. "Good morning, Daddy," she said softly. The words simple but powerful. Marcus nodded, a faint smile breaking through his hardened face. "Good morning, daughter." They stepped out into the ruined city together. The world still broken, danger still lurking, but now they were not alone. Every step Marcus took was not for survival alone, but for her, and every step she took was lighter, because she was no longer a lonely child. As they walked, the girl asked softly, "Will you tell me another story tonight?" Marcus looked at her, his voice steady. Every night. The path ahead was uncertain, but in their bond there was strength. In their promise there was light. In their love there was a family that no ruin, no hunter, no fear could destroy. And so the man who once walked alone, and the child who once begged for only one day, walked forward into tomorrow together. Not bound by blood, not bound by time, but bound by the unbreakable truth they had found. It was not just one day, it was forever.